Most sailboats don't have electrical systems as much as they have electrical archaeology, layers upon layers of decisions made by previous owners and yards and dockside electricians, and the one guy named Dave who was pretty sure everything was working. And the funny thing is, most of it does work until it doesn't. And when it doesn't, it usually happens at the worst possible moment, when you're tired and it's raining sideways and something important has just stopped doing the job it once existed to do. And that's why today we're talking about why sailboat wiring fails and what ABYC actually wants us to do. Not the myths, not the talk around the dock, not my buddy's boat's been fine for 20 years. We're going to stay firmly in the realm of what's known, what's proven, and what surveyors and insurers actually care about. Because wiring failures on boats are rarely dramatic. They're quiet, they're slow, and they're almost always predictable in hindsight. The first thing to understand is that boats are an absolutely hostile environment for electricity. There's salt air and moisture, vibration, movement, and temperature swings. Your house wiring, for example, sits in a wall and lives a life of luxury. Your boat wiring lives in a damp locker next to a leaky deck fitting and gets shaken like a paint mixer every time you sail to weather. Copper does not enjoy this lifestyle. Over time, moisture and oxygen work their way into the connections. Corrosion starts, resistance grows up, and heat follows. And suddenly, you have a system that technically still works, but only barely. Lights are dimmer, your pumps are running slower, electronics act weird and haunted, and eventually, something gives up entirely. And here's the key point that reputable marine publications have been making for years. Most wiring failures happen at the connection, not in the middle of the wire. The wire itself is rarely the villain. The terminations are, which brings us neatly to the difference between marine wire and household wire, because this is where people start sharpening their comment section knives. Marine grade wire isn't just more expensive copper with a boating tax slapped on it. The important difference is that marine wire is typically tinned copper, and that tinned coating dramatically slows corrosion when moisture inevitably finds its way into the connection. Household wire is bare copper. In a house, that's fine. In a boat, it's slow motion failure. If you strip back insulation on old house wire that's been in a boat for years, you'll often see that corrosion has crept inches back from the end, turning bright copper into dull green dust. That corrosion increases resistance, creates heat, and weakens the wire mechanically. This isn't theoretical. Surveyors see it every day. Magazines like Ours or Cruising World have been documenting this for decades. Now, to be fair, does household wire instantly burst into flames the moment it touches salt air or a boat? No. Boats are full of compromises, and many older boats have survived for years or decades with non-marine wiring. But the point isn't whether it can work. The point is whether it will continue to work reliably, safely, and predictably. And that's why marine wire earns its keep. The next big problem are the connectors we see all the time. And this is where ABYC gets very clear, and also where people love to argue. ABYC standards do not allow wire nuts in DC marine wiring. Full stop. Wire nuts are designed for dry, stationary environments where vibration is minimal and gravity is your friend. Boats vibrate, boats move, boats get wet. Wire nuts loosen and trap moisture and corrode internally where you'll never see it. Now here's the nuance that shows up every once in a while. In some circumstances, US Coast Guard regulations may permit wire nuts in certain very low-risk applications. That does not make them a best practice. ABYC standards exist precisely because boats are harsher than the minimum legal baseline. Marine magazines have been very consistent on this point. Crimped, mechanically secure connections using marine-grade terminals are the standard, and they're the standard for very good reasons. But even crimps can be done badly, and a lot of them are. A proper marine crimp is not just squeezing metal until it looks tight and giving it a little tug. It's the correct terminal, the correct wire size, a proper crimping tool, and ideally a sealed, adhesive-lined heat shrink that keeps moisture out and provides strain relief. Twisting wires together and taping them is not really a solution. It's a promise to future you that you'll be dealing with this problem again, probably at night. Recently, I actually got a hydraulic crimper from Amazon for dirt cheap. I got it because I had to crimp one battery terminal, and then I figured I'd probably have to throw the thing away. But I've been using it like crazy. It comes with all different size heads so that you can crimp different size terminals. It makes a tight, consistent crimp every single time I use it, applying way more pressure than I could with my regular conventional crimping tool. Another major reason wiring fails is vibration and lack of strain relief. Boats obviously move, your engine shakes, panels flex. If wires are left unsupported or hanging off terminals or bent sharply near connections, they fatigue. Copper work hardens. Eventually it cracks, and the failure point is almost always right where the wire enters the terminal. Have you ever noticed that? Good marine wiring looks boring. Wires are supported, not with the terminal or the fitting. They're actually just supported. They're bundled, they're routed cleanly. Nothing is hanging in midair, putting any strain on a terminal. That's not aesthetics, that's physics. Then there's voltage drop, something a lot of us just ignore, which doesn't get enough attention. It's just not dramatic. Voltage drop happens when wires are undersized for the load or run too long without compensation. The systems still work, but they work poorly. Your bilge pump's a great example. It might be running at half capacity. A lot of pumps will move less water with less voltage. Refrigeration will struggle. Your electronics will behave unpredictably. ABYC provides clear guidance on allowable voltage drop depending on the circuit. Critical systems like bilge pumps and navigation electronics are held to a little bit tighter standards than non-essential loads. This isn't like gold plating everything, it's just about making sure essential systems actually perform when you need them. Grounding and bonding deserve their own episode, but they're impossible to ignore here. Poor grounds cause more weird electrical symptoms than almost anything else on the boat. Intermittent faults, instruments that reset, corrosion that appears mysteriously fast. I actually had this problem in my boat where the stereo would forget all of its presets. It's such a minor thing, you kind of ignore it for even a whole season. But when I finally went to go address it, it turned out the constant power wire had some corrosion in it. I fixed it, and now it remembers everything every time. A bad ground doesn't just announce itself either, it just quietly makes everything worse, so check grounds definitely. And finally, there's the human factor. Boats change hands. Systems get added and subtracted. Someone installs a new gadget and ties it into whatever wire is nearby. Over time, circuits will become overloaded or undocumented and confusing. Labels fade, colors stop making sense, and suddenly, nobody actually knows what's powering what. This is why everyone consistently recommends periodic inspections of electrical systems, even if everything seems fine. Not because boats are fragile, but because electrical systems degrade invisibly until they don't work anymore. Now, if you're a buyer, here's the practical takeaway. You don't need to be an electrician to spot red flags. Open up the electrical panel. Does it look orderly or chaotic? Are wires supported and labeled or tangled and mysterious? Do you see marine-grade terminals and heat shrink that's actually been shrunk? Or do you see household connectors and electrical tape? Is corrosion present? If so, how widespread is it? One bad connection is normal. 10 bad ones are a system. Another easy test. Put the system under its heaviest load available, the fridge freezer or the air conditioner, or pull very hard on the inverter with an electric kettle or something, and then feel all the wires. I'll touch the main positive and negatives from the battery and any other wire in the vicinity, and I'm feeling for warmth. If something is restricted, you will feel it through the heat. Restriction is heat, and heat is a sign. If you're an owner, the takeaway is even simpler. You don't have to rewire the entire boat to dramatically improve reliability. Replacing corroded terminals, upgrading critical electrical circuits to marine wire, improving strain relief, dielectric grease, and sealing connections properly can eliminate most electrical gremlins for a long period of time. This is why experienced cruisers will tell you that good wiring doesn't make headlines. It just quietly does its job. What wiring suggestions do you have from your experience? I gave you my touch the wires test and hydraulic Amazon crimper thing. What do you have to share with folks? Love to see it in the comments. And speaking of sharing, Doug was at the Miami Boat Show and he wrote this article for us, 6 new products for sailors at the Miami International Boat Show. Check out these innovative and problem-solving new marine products exhibited at February's Miami International Boat Show, ranging from a digital transducer and an LED rescue flare to 2 new electric outboards. I'll leave a link in the description for that one. If you like sailboat videos, don't forget to give this one a thumbs up. It really helps us out, but also it lets YouTube know that you're into this kind of stuff, so it'll show you more of it. How cool is that? And hit subscribe so I can see you again next time.